Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets look to extend their winning streak to 4, taking on the Charlotte Hornets. We break down the lines, the key matchups, the injury updates, and ultimately the predictions. All coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day and twice on game days. As we drill down on our preview, over there is Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marbeck. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And Doug, the in-season tournament is well behind us. Rear view mirror, never even knew it occurred. But now it's time for victory number 4 in a row for Brooklyn.
Yeah, this is another chance for the Nets to kind of just keep padding the win-loss record here, which they desperately need to do as with games like this. These are I don't want to put anything ever into the must-win category, but when you're a team like Brooklyn and every win really, really matters, especially as you just sort of get toward the end of the season, or when we get to the end of the season, games against Charlotte that don't have LaMelo Ball and generally kind of just stink have to be games that the Nets win. And good news, they're getting right here with Cam Thomas and getting healthier, and just something that we haven't seen totally over the course of the season. So it's reflected in the line. It's reflected in sort of the predictions here. And this is a game that, the Nets just should come away with a W.
Yeah, 133-121 last time these teams met at the beginning of the season. And you mentioned, too, a game like this really matters because after you get out of this little homestand and East Coast kind of swing, they hit the West Coast. Like, they're going out there to take on Sacramento, Phoenix, Denver, Golden State, Utah. Those are all coming up here. So getting a couple of wins ahead of that really matters. You mentioned the line. It's still Brooklyn here with no ball for Charlotte. Going to be Brooklyn -8, -340 on the money line, and easily the largest over-under that we'll see during the season for the Brooklyn Nets, 224.5. At a high level with no ball here, this feels like you said, nothing can be a must win, but it's certainly as heavily a should win as possible, especially when you put Cam Thomas back out there, even if it's going to be on a minute restriction.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is just another season of Charlotte just not being a very good team, right? I mean, they're 5-11 on the season. They have one of the worst point differentials. I mean, they have the second worst point differential, and it's close to Detroit, who's like lost every single game since the middle of October. I mean, Detroit's lost 15
since the dawn of
games.
time.
I mean, they're terrible. And the Hornets have basically identical point differential problems as them, but minus 9.1 average per game. It's the third worst in the whole NBA. And now they miss they're missing easily their best player in LaMelo. I mean, I just don't see how you cut it any other way here with who they're playing, right? The Nets are heading in the other direction, getting healthier, getting stronger. We've already seen, the depth has played a really pretty good part for the Nets, even in circumstances where they're missing a bunch of guys. So now you get, arguably your best scorer in Cam, maybe not even arguably, your best scorer in Cam Thomas back into the mix. And you're playing just no other way around it. You're playing one of the very worst teams in all of basketball. It just can't really, if we get onto the post-game podcast here, the live one and on YouTube, and it's a loss, it's going to be a real bad set of feelings just based on just what everything looks like going in.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the Charlotte Hornets who have one of the worst three-point shooting percentages in the league. They take among the fewest three-point attempts in the league. And we always talk about 3 points worth more than 2. So they don't do that at a particularly high level. The only area really when I look at this, we talk about rebounding has been big for the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, there's some larger 7-footers on the interior for the Hornets, but that wasn't a problem the first time around ultimately. I look at it as just being the turnover game, something where the Nets don't turn the ball over. They don't make turnovers, for the opposition. The Hornets kind of do it volatile on both ends, but that's the one way that I think this thing is closer earlier than we anticipate, is if Charlotte is forcing some turnovers, although ball is a part of that process, and the Nets just don't do that. So if you're protecting the basketball and the Nets run a little bit cold to start, we saw this in the last couple of games, okay, then maybe it's a little bit interesting. But the one-on-one matchups here really favor the Brooklyn Nets in almost every single category.
Charlotte in their first game full game without LaMelo was against the Knicks, and they put up 91 points.
How did it go?
Right? It was terrible shooting from Terry Rozier, which you have to keep an eye on him. He's going to play obviously a lot of point guard with this team out. They have Miles Bridges back in the mix. That's a difference from the beginning of the season when the Nets faced him the first time. Brandon Miller is pretty permanently part of the starting lineup now, although he's been completely underwhelming to start the season. It's just a team that is flawed. It's a team that really, after PJ Washington as the sixth man, gets really gross really fast. Like you're looking at Ish Smith minutes, the O'Malley minutes, Bryce McGowan minutes. Like these are just barely, like none of these guys would play. Like the bench guys would, never crack rotations for the Nets. And sometimes we like to just compare things that way. Like when the Nets played Boston, we said, like, let's be realistic. Who on the Nets would even start for Boston? It was like probably McHale, and that's about it. I mean, you go the other direction here with the Hornets. It's like who. Now, again, the starting lineup is probably not completely dreadful, though still bad and raw and probably doesn't mix all the way together. But even when you just get out of the starting lineup and into the bench, you can just see where this team has really, really hard time scoring. They're going to have a hard time just sort of generating a lot of offense. We've seen the Nets be able to force turnovers when they dial it in. I think if they're dialed it in here from the very beginning, this game, actually, maybe there's a world where they run away with it. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with that because we've seen the Nets not capitalize on those kinds of situations in the past. But I just for like the third time, I can't understate. This is just one of the worst teams of basketball. And when you play these teams, I don't know, like the expectation just becomes, it just has to be, they have to be 10-8 after it.
Yep. That's just the way that it feels on paper. Coming up here in a second, let's get into that over-under line. I have some interesting thoughts about that, as well as individual performances over with our friends on FanDuel. We'll tap into that in just one moment.
All right, before we get into that, I'll tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Look, right now, when you are trying to get tickets for a game, if you're trying to get tickets for a play, a concert, whatever, you want the experience to just be fun and easy. You don't want to have ticket buying be the annoying, the frustrating, the difficult part of the whole process. You're here to have a good time. Gametime helps you get to the event that you want to go to. They lock everything in place too. You're going to be able to see exactly what you're going to see when you sit down in your seat. So there's not going to be any question there. You can lock in some flash zone deals as well to make sure you're getting the best prices. If you catch this in time, we're recording this Thursday morning before the game. There's still tickets on Gametime for Hornets at Nets starting at $8. Also, the mini court giveaway over there at Barclays. If that's just not the timetable, doesn't line up for you, they got Orlando Magic at Brooklyn Nets starting at $34 coming up this Saturday. It's all there for you from our friends over at Gametime. All you want to do right now to get in on the Gametime action, you download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA on the Gametime app for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends at the aforementioned FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on the FanDuel action right now. New customers, we've been telling you this forever. You have to get in on this. New customers are getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So right now on the money line, Brooklyn Nets a whopping minus 360, right? Okay, so heavy favorites in going in on the Hornets. The return on a minus 360, not huge. But if you figure, hey, they're going to lock this thing up against the Hornets, $5 money line bet, I'm going to get $150 in bonus bets when the Nets win. If the Nets win, don't want to just lock that as a full confirmation. But if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's just no better time to get in on the action. Spreads, player props, over-unders, so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Get in on the action this NBA season. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA.
All right, so as we turn our attention over to our friends at FanDuel, we talked about the -8, the minus now 360. This is how quickly things move, Doug. When we started the episode, it was minus 340. It's already ballooned to minus 360 on the money line for the Nets, 224.5 on the over-under. Interestingly enough, from a spread standpoint, Brooklyn's 13-3-1 against the spread so far this season, 6-10 for the Charlotte Hornets. So you can go ahead and do what you will with that information. The money line, Nets are only 9-8, 5-11 for Charlotte. So maybe that's a little bit of a different story there. This is the one where I'm going to go against the grain, I think, though. Oh. Charlotte is 10-6 on the over-under. The Nets are just 9-8. But I want to take the under in this game. I think I want to look at that Knicks game, only 91 points, and I want to say the Nets have not been a team that's been able to really shut down anyone per se defensively, but I like the idea of this thing being like a 115-ish to 90-something kind of range, right? Like Nets going away comfortably. Everybody waves the white flag in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, look, one reason to kind of go on the under here, one, if you're really betting against the Hornets having any kind of like off semblance of an offense, I think you always want to stick to unders. Look, and I get it too because, or excuse me, I get why it's sometimes hard. Betting unders is hard. This is why it's not where your brain wants to go. You don't want to root for less things to happen. There's just a lot of things that go against the idea of betting on unders, but also betting on unders can be super profitable because it's hard for everybody. If you assume that it's hard for everyone to bet on unders, then you can also sometimes make the assumption that that is where some of the profit lies because it's a tough button click, right? Like it's tough to find the under button when you're really doing it. The other piece of the under here is that the pace for the Hornets slows down considerably without LaMelo on the court, right? Like this is a pretty high paced team with him on. It's like sort of like what Simmons does for this the Nets when he's on the court, right? He pushes the pace, he's able to rebound the position well, and then really push the pace after. Charlotte on this season is ranked 5th overall in pace. That number does drop with LaMelo off, right? So like if you're looking at full season numbers for where Charlotte lands, you can't really use their full pace numbers because they're just not going to run at the same style without LaMelo on the court. Terry Rozier does not do the same thing, and they really lack much in the way of ball handling after that. Like you have like sort of combo wings in Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller, but they're not anything close to what LaMelo is. So I like going under here. It's tough. I can't reiterate this enough. Like having done this a long time, unders are tough button clicks, but there's a reason. Like you can find a lot of context for it in this game.
Yeah, I think so. And especially even though we know that Cam Thomas will be back, whether it's a minute restriction or just getting his legs underneath him, I actually think if this was like the second game or third game for him coming back off the injury, I might even be harder pressed just on that because all of a sudden you introduce a 27-point score and you go, I don't know, this could move the line there certainly. So in that vein for me, I am going to take the under. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to take the under on this game. I like the Cam Johnson plus 3 3-pointers made. And I'll even take, if we're going to bring Cam Thomas back, that means someone's going to have to dish him the rock so he can go with the basket. Spencer Dinwiddie over 8 assists. Wrap those up in a tiny little bow for yourself. That's plus 563. And Doug, for the most part, always agrees with me on what I lay out here for the parlays. It's just a matter of whether or not sometimes I think like Nick Claxton, he tweaked his ankle last time, and that suffered on my rebound projections. I need healthy bodies out there if I'm going to hit on these, Doug.
Yeah, real quick. I was actually just looking up we can go over that 1 second. I did want to just look at the pace. Just to make sure I was just for sure on this. So the pace with LaMelo on the court for the Hornets this year is 100 points. 101 basically. Even drops all the way to 98 points per possessions per 48 when he's off. I mean, that's a pretty 2% decrease. Like that's meaningful, right? It definitely just goes to hammer away at your point that like that is a good thing. Walk me through the your parlay again.
I'm just taking I got the under. I got Cam Thomas on 3+ made 3 Cam Johnson, excuse me, 3+ made 3-pointers. And then I went bullish on Spencer Dinwiddie, 8+ assists, because I assume, as we said in our last episode, these guys are going to share the court. Cam Thomas, Spencer Dinwiddie. So Dinwiddie goes full facilitator.
Yeah, I like that. I was trying to make a run at the minutes projections for the Nets this morning, and it was it was a little one. We don't have the for sure starting lineup, so that always kind of like has to have you hedge a little bit. And two, I just don't know if Cam Thomas is going to be limited when he comes back here. Right, it's an extended absence on like a leg, so a leg injury, and that can affect your conditioning. And so it's not like Draymond getting suspended for 5 games and then coming back and playing 36 minutes. Like he's able to keep up the conditioning. When it's a ankle injury, conditioning can be an issue as you come back. So I had Cam Thomas at 29 minutes. It did cut in. I'm the only one I'm worried about that with a little bit is the Cam Johnson, only because we've seen the numbers on him, like this cramping thing. I was wondering if they're giving him like some kind of soft minutes limit also with this recent cramping thing. It's hard to know. I don't think we've had an official word on it, but he only played 27 minutes in that game against Toronto in a decently close game. So I'm like a little worried about that one, plus the usage concerns. The other ones I do like. I think we still have a high minutes floor for Dinwiddie in this case. So I'm going to lodge my one little hesitation piece with Cam Johnson because I think there's a little context between usage and minutes where I worried that he has enough opportunity to get there.
Break those pieces apart, put them all together, stack them up however you like. The bottom line is Doug and I both believe the Brooklyn Nets are going to get a 4th win in a row here, get themselves to 10-8 and start to put some distance between themselves and that 500 benchmark. Game's coming up tonight. You can enjoy it wherever you get it, including on SiriusXM if you search Brooklyn Nets. And then we'll be doing the post-game live over on YouTube. Doug, any thoughts on the way out?
No, just excited for the game. We'll be live after YouTube. Probably be soloing that one, so come hang out and give me a little bit of a
Give Doug a boost.
give me a little
Help
help.
give Doug a little hand here.
It's all good. This is the other reason we desperately need the Nets to win. Showing up solo on the post game live YouTube with a Nets loss against the Hornets might be more than your boy can take. So let's really hope for a net win, and we'll be back live after the game talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
It does not do to leave a live dragon out of your calculations if you live near one. J.R.R. Tolkien.
One of the all-time great poets, my man Jur. We'll be back again, like I said, after YouTube. Back again, like I said, on YouTube, following the game, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Jur, basketball. Yeah.